My name is Pete Donndelinger, and I'm from La Crosse, and I'm a retired chemistry teacher, and I've been retired now for about 5 years. I just started writing about 4 years ago, and I actually started writing a novel. And then Kelly formed her poetry group, and I went to the poetry group. So I do fiction, short stories, and poetry. And every once in a while, a poem will pop out. I'll fix it, take it to group. We'll kind of maneuver it. I like reading, if I can, to groups. And Minnesota Poet Laureate and the Winona Arts Council had a monthly reading. It's kind of finished now, but I was going there for a couple of years reading each night on Tuesday night, first Tuesday nights of the month. I am an immature poet. I don't have pretty words. I struggle to find the right words. I always tell people that I can fight for months just to get 3 lines in poetry, whereas in fiction I can pop out 1,500 words in a day. So I've never really read a lot of poetry, so I don't have the vocabulary. I have the vocabulary of a chemistry teacher. It's funny because he's not in vogue, but Robert Frost helps my poetic vocabulary. And I look to him for his soft words, his ability to paint an image with very few words. So I look to him a lot. I don't try to mimic him, but I find the words there. I kind of started liking poetry when I lost my wife about 10 years ago. And my brother-in-law gave me a copy of Donald Hall's book, Without. And that's a book of poems. And I've read a lot of Donald Hall. He lost his wife, Jane Kenyon. And his poetry is kind of stark sometimes. It runs the gamut from baseball to losing Jane. And then like I say, about 2 years ago, it just started coming out. Yeah, and I want people to understand my poems. I don't want them to be angered by them. I want them to read the poem and know what it's about. I spend 2 to 2.5 hours a day in a coffee shop in La Crosse. They all know me. People know me. There's people sit across the table from me every day, and we call it our little cubicle. And I try to take the first 20 to 30 minutes. I try to either work on a poem or start a poem or find a seed for a poem. Then I close it up, and then I go into my novel that I'm working on and work on that, or else I'll work on a short story or something. So I try to dedicate a little bit of time every day to that. And I try to write 6 days a week. I like to see doors open for people just to express their poetry. As I said, the first Tuesday of the month for the last couple of years, the Winona Arts Council had an open mic at the Blue Heron Coffee Shop. And I would go there with my raw, unpolished poetry, and they would listen. And then occasionally I'd get done with a poem and I'd hear, oh. And it was like, okay, this is good. And it was just people that wanted to write and liked poetry and were artists themselves versus open mics with songs and music and sharing the mics with that. I wish there were more of just that kind of thing. Sure. Where you can come. Because my steps would include writing a poem, taking it and getting it critiqued a little bit, then standing up in front of a crowd and just reading it and see what the response was. And by the time I did all those things, I know I'd be finished with the poem. I don't see a lot of that in La Crosse. There is some, but the open mics are typically music, comedians, and poetry. And we put that all together, and it's not necessarily the kind of crowd I want to share with. And I'm older, so if it's a younger crowd, I get kind of bashful. I do have 2 poems in an anthology that was published by Wagon Bridge Press out of Winona. Terry Karsten is the publisher and compiler of the anthology. There's actually 56 different authors. I have 2 short stories and 2 poems in that. It's called Lost and Found, Tales of Things Gone Missing. Someday I'm keeping manuscript. I've got 50, 60 poems in a manuscript, and someday I think Terry will publish something for me, or I'll find a publisher, or else just do it myself. It'd be nice to have my novel and groupings of short stories. Yeah, it'd be nice to have that, but I want my kids to be able to read my poems and see them in book form. I'm inspired a lot by my loss, and it's kind of healing to write about it and bring it out in different ways. And then I like bringing humor, if I can, and sometimes I'll write something humorous and silly. I don't like writing anger. I don't want somebody to be offended by my poems, because if I ever should write a book and there's poems in there that would offend them, well, why would I want to sell you a book that's going to offend you? So it's pretty safe poetry to that extent. But it, I don't know, it's just different. And that's kind of who I am. Yeah. The first one is Through the Open Windows Screen, and this is relatively new. Through the open windows screen, I spied in wonder at a cloud that shaded sun. With a finger I traced images on its form: a dog, a bird, a tree, a face. All clouds had shapes when I was 10. On a walk I gaze a sunlit cloud, and raise a finger to trace an image: a dog, a bird, a tree, a face. This cloud has none of these. It's just a cloud. Not all clouds hold shapes, now that I'm not 10. I think I'm going to read this one. It's called Butterfly. As if I were a golden blossom of wallflower, a monarch landed on my shoulder. It flitted, circled round and round, looped and landed on my outstretched palm. In that instant we were paired, a regal follow for my modest lead. Then together we danced, a waltz, as none else mattered. Step 2, 3, turn 2, 3, break 2, 3, together 2, 3. We bowed 2, 3, and laughed. When the music stopped, it circled, looped, and landed on my heart, flapped its wings, and left a mark, an impression that warmed the sun, and greened the trees, and stirred the breeze, and wrote the tunes. Then it flew away and lit the moon. Embers. Red-hot wood crackles in the fire pit between a half-moon's light. Scents of honeysuckle sprinkle the air. Our friends have gone their separate ways. No more talk, no more laughter. Holding a skewered marshmallow over burning coals, I am aware of your presence in the shimmering glow. I wrote this about writing.
Awesome.
And about the difficult challenges I have with writing words. It's called Elusive Beauty. Ineffective words spill on a page, like errant paint spatters a canvas. A frustrating struggle and persistence to find depth from nothing. Word replaces word, analogy alters metaphor. Start over, keep everything. Change the palette, a fresh page. Block in, set the scene. a fresh brush, a raw line, an untried color, a new meaning, a clean edge, a polished phrase. Blend, emend. Stop, step away. Give it space to breathe, to grow, to stumble, to walk, to run in sunshine, to play in moonlight. The piece directs the path. Do as it says, not as you will. Finality is an apparition, elusive, shimmering, evanescent. My name is Pete Donndelinger. I live in La Crosse, and I'm wishing you a happy Poetry Month. Just go and write something, put it on paper, and see what you end up with. Hopefully it'll make you happy.